Christina Rea, and welcome to Breaking Out of Breaking In, a practical filmmaking podcast about taking your creative career into your own hands and making great work that gets seen without playing the Hollywood game.
Or at least while changing the rules. Hi, I'm Brie Castellini, your other co-host, and today we are continuing our responsible filmmaking mini-series, this time talking all things environmentally sustainable film sets with Stephanie Dawson. Before we dive in, remember that we release bonus content for each episode over on patreon.com/breakingoutpod if you want to support us and get yourself even more info and resources. But enough about that. Stephanie, welcome. Can you introduce yourself and what you do?
Hi, my name is Stephanie Dawson. My current role is I'm a producer for a show called Great Performances, which is produced out of WNET Channel 13 in New York City, and it's a nationally broadcasted show on PBS. Prior to that current life, I worked as a freelance production manager, line producer. I also currently serve as the co-chair of the Producers Guild Green Committee, and I am trained as a climate reality leader, go Al Gore, and I am currently involved in what's known right now as the Entertainment Net Zero Accord, aka ENZA, which is an effort supported by the UNFCCC trying to use the power of the UN to encourage our industry to be more sustainable. And I like music, and I live in Brooklyn, and I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. I think that's enough to get started.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you ever sleep? You're a part of like 5 organizations and have a job.
Well, I did that. I just gave you the environmental stuff. I also co-founded a group called Women Independent Producers, which we focused on women identified independent producers, so non-studio folk who understand the hard work of getting a project over the finish line. There's other things. I'm producing. I'm in the development stage of producing a feature film that I co-wrote in 2020. Over the pandemic shutdown, it let me realign and reassess that I really love writing. I love storytelling generally, but writing is something I hadn't really done. Allowed myself to do. So a director I had been working with was like, let's write something together. And so I was watching self-tapes yesterday, and it was just like, these are words that I helped write. And these are audition tapes, but it was beautiful to see that. So do I sleep? I do sleep, but less than I should, I think. But I've been trying to meditate throughout at least twice a day. So that helps. I think that offsets the sleep. I think you just need a rest time for the brain. But that's a different podcast, I guess.
Yeah, we'll bring you back when we do our How to Stop Freaking Out series.
The self-help series. Self-care.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe we should do a self-care series. We've done sporadic episodes, but
I think that's very necessary, especially for folks who are trying to do this in an unorthodox way, because we tend to burn ourselves out and then either disappear and give up for good, or decide that that's the way to be, is always burnt out, and it doesn't have to be that way, I guess. So again,
no, it doesn't.
Podcast for another time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, so let's go back a little bit further, because despite all of these incredible things that you're doing in the film world and the sustainability world, when you were in college, you actually studied science and engineering. Is that right?
That's correct. I went into college. I was a straight A student. I was valedictorian. Everybody told me, you're smart. You should do the smart thing. And I got a scholarship to school. I mean, it's kind of, looking back on it now that I can look back on it, we kind of tell people if you do this, then you should do that, So I listened. Mm-hmm. I was someone who loved filmmaking from a very young age, but was told, well, since you're smart, you should do the hard thing. So I went in studying paper science engineering, which was the hardest major, literally, I kid you not. It was young hubris, maybe arrogance, and also me riding on the highs of me feeling that I'm so smart. So I picked the hardest major. I went to Miami University, which is in Oxford, Ohio. I studied paper science engineering. And midway through, I switched to environmental science and found like that was really what I wanted to do. But then when it came time to graduate and find a job, I was able to secure a job at what was then Anderson Consulting and what became Accenture. So for the next 6 years, didn't do engineering, didn't do environmental. I did IT consulting for 6 years. In my 20s, I was traveling to and fro, collecting hotel points and airline miles and thinking I was all this. And when 9/11 happened, there were 2 years that I flew 50 weeks out of the year, literally flying out Monday, flying back Friday or Thursday. And,
oh my gosh.
And yeah, I feel like that movie Up in the Air Life, the George Clooney, Anna Kendrick movie, is like my life. Like that opening scene where it's like a ninja style. He puts a suitcase in, and then he's like the last person on the plane. I did that. Like I could time leaving home, so I was the last person to get on the plane. I could get through security and everything. And when 9/11 happened and we were grounded, and all of a sudden I developed a fear of planes. And my dad worked for an airline. Like I had been flying since I was a child. Like when all my friends talked about road trips, for me, it was airline trips. Like I always flew. And so to have the thing that I loved since I was a kid, not only not be available, but also to be a source of fear was life changing. So I kind of had this moment of like, if I'm going to die, let me die doing something I love. And that is film. So I figured out a way to go to film school. I quit what my dad calls my good job. I quit my good job I went to Full Sail, which at the time was a 1-year associate's program for film and television production. And I was almost 30. Like I turned 30 at Full Sail. I'd already had a career. Like I felt like I could get an MFA or I could get a practical degree. So, Full Sail is a very hands-on type of school. And one of the reasons I chose Full Sail is I spent almost better part of a year going back and forth to different film schools, visiting. I went out to USC. I saw the cool campus and how, heard about all the highfalutin people that go there and not just attend, but like all the people that go back, and George Lucas gives all this money, and Steven Spielberg and all this. And I kind of got swept up into that. But when I went to Columbia, when I was in New York, one of the grad students there said that some people spend 3 years and X number of thousands of dollars and realize they just like to watch movies. And that struck me. I was like, you know what? I love watching movies. I love talking about movies. And I need a practical education. I think a theoretical education would make me, I really took to heart what that student said. And I don't remember his name, but he was another turning point in my trajectory. So I'm probably ahead of your questions, but yeah. So I started out in engineering, went into IT consulting, then pivoted, went back to film. And then after a few years I went to school. I went back home for a little bit. I came to New York in 2007. So just before the financial crisis. So there wasn't a lot of jobs around. So I ended up working a lot in reality television, and then I worked for a hotel for a year, like when things were drying up. But the hotel, while I was working for the hotel, I was interning for Joyce Pierpoline, who's an independent producer. She produced the film Teeth that Mitchell Lichtenstein directed. So I was able to do a free internship because I had a job that paid me. And through that, I met a ton of people in the industry. I also worked on some projects. The people that I met in that reality TV life were all trying to make their own short films, their own feature films. So I was, but on the weekdays working either at a hotel or whatever gig I had. And on the weekends, I was ADing shorts and super low budget, like no budget projects, just to get my foot in the door and get some experience. I tried out for the DGA AD training program and failed twice. So I figured ADing was not going to be my future, but I really liked breaking down a script. When I was even at Full Sail, I kind of knew that producing was a thing for me. I loved breaking down scripts. I loved figuring out what resources we need, putting the budget together, all the organizational things. It kind of fed into the things that I do normally is the organizational piece. So ADing I felt like a natural progression on my way to becoming a producer, because I would be breaking down the script and I'd be on set and managing and liaising between the director and the producer. I worked on an NYU student's film. I worked on a feature film that has yet to come out, but we made it through. And then eventually I started gigging again, and I went back and forth again. So this is probably 2010, and we still were coming out of a financial crisis. So independent film was coming back slowly but surely, but I had already, in this industry, you get known for something. So I started out in reality. So I kept getting those jobs. And I eventually realized, like, in order to change, you need to declare it. You need to say, this is what I'm doing now. So I stopped taking the reality jobs and started only looking for scripted. And as it turned out, Joyce's assistant had moved on. So she called me to see if I could be her new assistant. So I was her assistant for almost 3 years. And during that time, we were in development hell over a couple projects. And she was bringing to the screen. And I learned a lot. Also, while I was working for her, she spent some time in the summer in Cannes. And I would be in the office. So she was like, as long as the office is taken care of, if you want to go work on a film, feel free to do so. So I worked on like 3 different films over the course of those 2 years. And one of them was with Larry Fessenden at Glass Eye Pix. And he was someone who was super into being environmentally responsible. So it was one of the first times that I recognized, you need the top down. You need the person in charge to declare this is what I want, and everybody will kind of follow suit, even begrudgingly. They will follow suit if the head of the show does that. So he was like, I want us to recycle. I want us to, we can have vegetarian meals more often than not. We were shooting in, I feel like it was in Connecticut. We were shooting at a reservoir in Connecticut. The movie was called Beneath. And it was a horror film. Glass Eye Pix, Larry Fessenden does mostly horror. We had to find out where to recycle cans and bottles in the middle of Connecticut. And we had to find out how, could we compost some food, and could we find a caterer who could accommodate people's meals? We did have a couple vegan folks as well. So it kind of made it easier to do the vegetarian thing. So I thought that was, that was a real eye-opening moment. And then it came back to me like, I can do the thing that I did in college, and I can work on film, and like, this makes sense. So that was a long way to say kind of where I started and kind of the turning point to how I got to where I am now. I don't know what your other questions are, but that's hopefully a good start, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no.
Before we really dive into the sustainability aspect, what is from a creative perspective, what is your like genre or just type of narrative work that you're interested in producing and now writing as well?
That's a great question. I love everything, but at different points in my life. Like, I love to watch sci-fi and fantasy. That is my bag. Like, Disney Plus taking on Star Wars is like a gift and a curse, because now I can watch all of my favorite Star Wars movies, but then I know that they have a parade of stormtroopers in the park every day. And I'm just like, this is sacrilege. How can you parade stormtroopers? Like, Darth Vader has a show? Are you kidding? Darth Vader's the baddest guy in the universe. Like, in the galaxy. Why are we doing this? But anyway, I'm a Star Wars fan. I also really love a good rom-com. I kind of miss the 80s and 90s rom-coms. While I understand now, looking back at them, they were quite problematic. There's definitely some stuff that I realized some of the messages I got were probably not the right messages. They're kind of like comfort food. Like a good rom-com is like comfort food. And I also grew up I love coming of age films. So I also, John Hughes films, I grew up loving them, knowing now that there are some problematic areas in those films. So coming of age is probably what I write the most. I think how we decide who we are, how we decide to tell the world who we are, how we grapple with, can we change who we are if we don't like it? Or what are all the things that make us who we are, and do we have to hold on to those things for the rest of our lives? Those kinds of questions I find are those are the ones that don't let me go. Like, I always think of those, and then I just put them in different places. Like, maybe that happens in space, or maybe that happens in in the heart of a rom-com.
So you were working on this horror film in Connecticut. You're learning that you can find a way to marry the stuff that you studied in college and cared about, and the filmmaking that had become your passion. So at what point did you start to get like more directly involved with sustainability efforts in film?
It was probably a couple years after that, but it was sprinkling in through. So like, it's kind of like, I feel like sometimes once you see something, you can't unsee it. So once I saw we can be more responsible, I would slowly start doing more of that on my other productions. So even on the big reality shows that I worked on, it's like, where's the recycling can? Like, just asking production to provide a recycling can. Asking, what happened? Can we donate this food? We have so much food after catering, and literally, like, I don't know if the Good Samaritan law really covers this, but literally going through the streets with trays of food or like packing lunches and handing it out to the homeless people. Because unfortunately in New York City, there's no lack of homeless people. And it also was very personal, because on that particular crew, we had crew members who were living check to check and had unfortunately had to sleep on the street 1 or 2 nights, or had been without a home for a period of time. So it was also it was very easy to recruit supporters who were like, basically, literally after each meal, we would pack it up and say, let's go deliver this to the people on the street. And eventually we got more organized. We called church or a nearby food kitchen, and they would come pick it up. But we were not doing that with the blessing of production. Like, this was our department just, enacting these things in our own way. And if those things weren't available, I would literally, if we couldn't recycle at the office, I would literally make a collection, and then I would bring it home. Then I started, when composting became a thing in the city, curbside composting, but then you could go to the green markets. I would find out where the green market is near where we were shooting, or where our office was, and then put out a compost bin and then deliver the compost. And I did even up through one of the last places I worked was this corporate office. I'm wrestling with that, but I feel like sometimes when you approach management, they just give you that stink eye, and it's just I don't want to have another person tell me no. So I just would bring in a compost bin. One of this fancy schmancy office that we were in had a nice espresso machine where people would grind the beans all day, and then just minute after minute, people just throwing the coffee grounds into the trash. And again, I can't unsee it. I've totally, it hurts me. It's an emotional sting to see what could be composted or otherwise not put in the landfill, be put into the trash absentmindedly. I think one of the biggest things is we need to rethink what waste is and trash is. We need to change our relationship to these things. Just because you're done with it doesn't mean it's trash. It could be used, reused. It could be donated. It could go somewhere else. Just because there's no convenient place to put it right now doesn't mean we don't use our imaginations and find a place to put it. So I brought in a compost bin, and I would, and slowly I would just, first I'd leave the bin out there. Then I put a little sign, and I went to the clip art school, and I was like, put little images like your banana peels and your apple cores and all those coffee grinds and all those pictures of things hey, people, you can put these things in the compost bin. And then whenever I had to go deliver, because this particular job I'm talking about, it was near Union Square, and that market comes every 3 days a week. So I would literally leave a little sign, compost bin is being emptied. We'll be right back. So And slowly but surely, people would put more and more stuff into the compost bin. And it became like I was Santa Claus, because every once in a while, it's like, who is emptying this compost bin? We always see that it's there. So anyway, I was infiltrating in a certain way. But then I would work on projects like I did this Netflix film, Holiday Rush, and Poke Productions. I believe one of the producers, Liz Cullen, was just adamant about being more sustainable. So she made sure we had water bottles, and it was like, I was in the production office for that film, and it was like a mandate, every single person, when they get started, they should need to get a water bottle on their first day. And we put their name on it. So it was, again, when the person at the top says, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do. And that was really as far as she mandated, but I was like, hey, so Liz really thinks we should be green. So can we get a recycling bin? And then the production coordinator was like, yeah, we can get a recycling bin. And then it's like, oh, can we compost? It became because I found a place that was not too far, I think 3 or 4 blocks away, a market that I could drop off the compost. So, and I don't know if that's legal in the city, but it was technically business waste, but it was such a low amount that it looked like personal waste. I think Liz was also very adamant that we didn't have a lot of either styrofoam or immediate disposable plateware and silverware. We had real plateware and silverware, and I washed it. I will do whatever I need to do to make sure that people use the thing. Because if it's there and it's available and it's easy and it's clean and it's safe, all those things, people will use it. But if there's a little bit of inconvenience, if I got to search for something, if I got to hunt for something, then it's harder for people to kind of fall into it, unless they also, like me, can't unsee it and then have developed an almost a reaction. It's like nails on a chalkboard to watch somebody throw compost, food waste into the trash. So anyway, I kind of was doing that on my own. And then I went to the PGA Green Committee. Producers Guild has multiple committees, about various things. And the Green Committee deals with sustainability. And it's a combination of information sharing, liaising with the city. And, if we can have, any kind of legal ramifications, we try to do that. They also started an inter-guild alliance between the different unions and guilds in New York City. I'm the New York City based. Originally, we were divided across East and West. So PGA East was everything east of the Mississippi, and West is west of the Mississippi. But now we are more of a, like all PGA in terms of the Green Committee. But at the time, the Interguild network really was all the East Coast folks. So they have quarterly meetings with, all of the unions and guilds, particularly IA and the Teamsters are there almost every time, camera department, art department. So we're getting more and more of the folks. We hope we finally got SAG and then we've got the Broadway Green Alliance, also Local 1 has representation there. So we meet on a regular basis to share information, to let people know what we're doing and what you can do. The Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment shows up to those meetings pretty regularly. Also, the state film office has come to some meetings. So I got involved with PGA Green now almost 3 years ago, and through them learned about companies like Earth Angel. Emily O'Brien is just Renaissance woman in so many ways. She started this company. So it's a woman-started company that will train eco PAs. They'll come to your set and train your various departments on how they can be more sustainable within their department. They'll also talk to production to figure out how overall we can have a more blanket system. They have bins and like a system to bring to you so you can, separate things in a good way, and just basically do like an assessment and then input the things that you could enact on your set. And then they also do the reporting. So, how much was diverted from landfill, how much energy did you save, how many water bottles, weren't, how many times did you not need to use a reusable water bottle? And so I learned about Earth Angel, and then through the PGA really got to have opportunities working with now this UN effort, which is, we're connected to people across the globe. Oh, one thing I have to add, actually, another big factor that kind of helped me in this whole journey is the Green Production Guide. It's a free online service. Anyone can use it. You don't necessarily have to use it for film. You can use it for any event, live events, music, anything like that. But it is a toolkit. It has case studies, it has videos. Like if you don't want to read something, there's a video. If you want to read something but don't want it to be too long, there's a case study that's like a page or two long. If you want to read the science, there are white papers that you can download. And then there's also a toolkit that you can download that includes draft emails to your crew. It includes their carbon calculator. It includes their sustainability planner, essentially, and a lumber calculator, Make sure that I hit all the parts of it.
And we'll definitely link to this, everybody.
Yes.
The link will be in the episode notes, so no worries on that. You don't have to hunt it down. We've hunted it down for you.
Yes, and there's also a vendor guide, so you can find vendors in your area. So it has its own kind of education on not just what you can do, but who are the vendors or the resources that can help you do it. So I found that to be another thing that just helped me along. It's like, yes, we can do this. It's there. It's, it's not like this far off thing. We can be more sustainable. And so, I'm in my current role. As I keep finding, I'm working on a set where your production team is like, well, we'd like to do something more sustainable, but there's always the but, there's always the no.
Sure.
It's too expensive. Well, I think one of the things that the Green Production Guide kind of outlines is it's actually not too expensive. If you buy water bottles, it might be an overall capital cost at the beginning, but over the course of your production, you're saving money. I was trying to do this calculation yesterday. Like if a 24 pack of water bottles, and I usually gauge about 3 water bottles a person, sometimes 5 if it's a really hot day. And they never finish them. Knock on wood. It's very often that you find water bottles that are barely sipped, or maybe there's some left in it. You can probably take care of 8 people with a case of water. And in New York City, there's a 5-cent deposit on that water bottle on top of the cost of the water bottle. If you buy pre-branded bottles that are marked with your production, number one, people they think they're cool because they got their bottle. You have to label the bottle, though. The bottle is always very important. Also, people usually finish their personal water bottle. They don't always finish the disposable water bottle. And a 5-gallon jug of water, I think it's like 600 ounces. So it can almost carry like 12 people. So over the course of the same production, you don't have the deposit bottle on deposit on the big 5-gallon jug, and you can cover more people with fewer bottles. So it's actually, there might be an initial capital cost, but it's actually going to save you in the long run. And you don't have all that trash. You don't have those bottles. Even if you believe that we can recycle those bottles, which is another area of concern. I mean, the local recycling service, I'm blanking on their name right now, but they do tours. It's really kind of cool to do a tour of the recycling plant, and they've even done virtual tours. We had one of those for our event for PGA Green. They tell you how, when you recycle a bottle, please leave the cap on, because they're doing everything through this mechanical process. And so little things get caught and they gum up the works. So leave the cap on. Mm-hmm. And there's this little machine that goes pew, pew, pew. And it basically, between air and density and all stuff, it can route paper from bottles from cans. So I used to think that, like, is mixed recycling really going to work? But now I've seen the machine and I see how it goes pew, pew, pew. So that's, so that's feasible. But at the end of the day, it's a business. Like, the material has to be able to be used for something. And unfortunately, we have not created a really large post market for water bottles. So that's why you get, the island in the middle of the ocean that just is filled with plastic. So anyway, I've, through this process, learned about these different resources, learned about ways that on set we can be more sustainable. And then I try to take them into my own life. And yeah, I feel like I've left your question in the dust. I don't even remember.
No, this has all been great.
Yeah, when we don't interrupt you, it means that we are wrapped. Like,
yeah, you're touching all the bases.
So let's recenter on set and kind of get more practical for our audience. What would you say is like a common misconception when it comes to making sets greener in particular?
A misconception. I mean, the biggest misconception is that it's too expensive.
Sure.
And the reality is, so we've determined through different reports, and the Green Production Guide website has one of the reports that there's this group called the Sustainable Production Alliance, which is made up of several studios and streamers that have come together, and they are a part of the Green Production Guide, as is the Producers Guild Foundation. So they did a survey of productions over the course of, I think, a year and a half, and came up with what are the areas of production that need to be addressed the most. And energy consumption, it came out to be the biggest one. So if we think about how much gas we need to put into a diesel generator, or how much fuel we spend with our drivers sitting in cars keeping them air conditioned, those kinds of things feel like that's less expensive. Then maybe we don't need so many cars. Maybe we have a smaller footprint and we move everybody inside. It's kind of a psyche thing for drivers to want to keep the car running, even when they're not going anywhere. Even if they go inside the store. Like, I don't know where this came from, and I don't know what it's going to take to get out of that mindset, but that's something we have to unlearn, the idea of idling for no reason. If we look at re-examining our energy use and implementing batteries, or tie-ins, or using renewable sources of energy, there's more technology that use alternative sources of energy for being on set, even when you're remote. I think that's one of the challenges. They look at the sticker shock of the initial capital investment and don't think about the ongoing cost of upkeep and say, oh, well, it's too expensive. So I think, number one, actually, when you run the numbers, it can be the same cost or less expensive to use the more environmentally responsible choice. Number two is, we have 7 years. We have 7 years until we've committed to irreversible damage. And I don't think we really have that long, because I come from a family that has respiratory issues in my family, and they're getting worse. We are seeing more and more diseases that we wouldn't have seen if the temperature wasn't as hot and we weren't cutting down trees and going into habitats that we hadn't been going into before. So one of the biggest misconceptions is that it will cost more. Another misconception is that the crew won't do it. I have found that particularly people in, no matter what department, there's always, well, the crew won't do it. They won't do it. They won't do it. And what I found when you talk to crew members is they feel production, or the producers, or the people in charge, don't give them what they need in order to be more sustainable. So If the, again, it has to be top down. The producer or the cast member or the director, someone needs to set the example and be consistent, hold themselves accountable to that plan that they put out into the world, that they want to be more sustainable, and then provide the opportunity. Instead, like, get rid of any opportunity for someone to throw something in the trash. Put trash cans on the other side of the set and put out recycling in the more accessible places. Because 9 times out of 10, the thing that you want to get rid of can be recycled or can be composted. Another thing that I find is that we don't necessarily always need a virgin material. Like, when you're going to look at your costumes, you could get something from a resale shop. You get something from buy something that's secondhand that can achieve the goal, especially when you're talking about clothes that should be lived in, clothes that look like the character has had them before and they're not brand new. Because you buy something new and then distress it, as opposed to buying something that's already meets what you need it to look like. And I know people feel ooey gooey, using the shared coffee or the shared water bottle or wearing clothes that have been worn before. They get washed. Like, that's like, I don't like, it's one of those things where so part of it is mindset. Part of it is getting out of the place that we've always been and thinking that the only way to have something is it be new and shiny. And we have the car that's running all the time and we have this diesel generator going all the time, and realize, if we just, I think Emily said this in the panel last year, we are in the business of making things up. We act like we're going to space all the time. We create world. We have the imagination. We have the possibility to create a reality that represents what can be more helpful for us. So let's think about, instead of having that diesel generator, which is also very loud, we got to take it far away from camera, but we can't have it too far away because then it won't be able to deliver the energy we need. So why don't we look at batteries? Batteries are silent. Like, sometimes when we take these solutions, we realize, actually, it's better all around. I mean, that may not be for 100%, but if we stop and think about the way things have always been and start thinking, well, how can we make it better? How can we imagine a present, not just a future, where we are being good stewards to our earth? It's also, we are finding, or just acknowledging more and more, that as we hurt the environment, we are also hurting people who are marginalized anyway. The impact of the climate crisis is affecting the global south. It's affecting every location we shoot in. We go to all these locations and we bring all these people from out of town and we shoot in low income neighborhoods, or we shoot because the neighborhoods that have a lot of money, they fight. They pay every politician to never have a film in their neighborhood. So it's all the people who don't have that power who we end up filming in the neighborhood, and we leave behind trash. We take over the street. We have loud noises. We have crew members who are so busy doing whatever they do that they may not be as considerate as they could be of the neighbors. So we also need to be responsible humans. We need to be responsible to each other. And so being more sustainable also, I think, has the knock-on effect of also being more good stewards and good neighbors to each other.
No, I think that's really important.
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
Before I have another question, I just want to call out something that you said about, like, nobody thinks the crew will do it, but it's oftentimes that the people in charge won't make it easy on them. And I think that we can expand that out to a lot of subjects when it comes to filmmaking. I feel like a lot of the times people have all these excuses of like, well, nobody will follow. Everyone's lazy. And it's like, yeah, but also everyone's busy. And when you're in charge, it is your responsibility to set the people up around you up for success. And I feel like we so rarely do that. We expect other people to do the work that we want them to do without prepping them in any way. You can think about it in marketing. I cannot tell you how many film producers I meet with who are like, oh, my cast and crew won't share the project that we're posting. I'm like, well, did you give them anything to share? They're like, well, there's pictures out there. I'm like, cool, there's pictures out there. Like, did you send them anything specifically? Did you make them content that they wouldn't want to share? It's like, people are willing to do a lot, but you have to give them something. And I just think that's an important thing to call out here, not just for environmental sustainability, but for collaboration in general.
Absolutely. And I think you'll find people step up when you give them the opportunity and you let them know what is the desired behavior, what's the desired outcome. And I'm going to support you. I'm going to be here to help you through this. I mean, one of the big things that Earth Angel and folks like that who do kind of eco sustainability on your sets, sometimes they set up a competition, sometimes a little healthy competition That's all they need. So the departments are like, well, like it becomes a thing of like, well, we composted more than you did this season. Like, and so it not only will the crew do it, they will happily do it. They will move heaven and earth to make sure that they're adhering to this, but you have to give them the tools and you have to treat them like humans. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if you make it difficult, if you put some obstacle or friction between the behavior they're currently doing and the one you want them to do, they will not do it. And you know what? Neither will you. So like, it's not that the crew is this other extraterrestrial being that won't follow rules that you've set aside. They're humans just like you are. They got jobs just like you do. But if you put it in front of them, I think the marketing one is perfect. I have a film that I worked on a couple years ago, is coming out later this month. My producer sent us an email. He's like, here's the trailer on YouTube. Here's the article. Here's some other things you can share. I would have loved if he'd given us a trailer so we can post it directly. But you know what? He gave me the link. So I know I can't put the trailer on Instagram, but I can put a link on Facebook and I can put a link on some of these other things. And that is what you need. And their organization has been tagging us individually, like on all the things. So I'm like, oh, I got tagged. Let me repost. So I think you're absolutely right. Doing things that make it easier, set people up for success. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, I stole that from my mom. My mom, when I was a kid, was like, that was her entire ethos of like raising kids, is like, I am not going to be mad at my kids for acting like kids. I'm going to set them up for success, model the way that I want them to behave, around others. And that's all I can do. Like it's such a useful phrase.
It is.
So speaking of different departments, have you found like specific things that work better for camera department versus the art department? Like what are department level sustainability hacks that you've learned over the course of your time being a climate reality person?
That's a good question. I mainly work in the production department, so that's the one I have the most visibility into. And so production, so like usually production, like production coordinating, UPM, line producer, accounting, and any of the office coordinators, we tend to be in the office. So the office environment is a great place to enact some sustainability measures. And I'll plug the Green Production Guide yet again. Another thing it has is infographics of on set and different places where you can make changes on set. In the office, different places you can make changes in the office. So, one of the biggest things we do in the production office is push paper. The distro, we got to distribute the new schedule, the new scripts, the new this, the new that. And we have this huge copy machine. And then we have this huge, like, Iron Mountain shredding thing that comes at the end of the year for all of this paper. So one thing you can do in the production department is to reduce the amount of paper. More and more, I have actors come to me with their scripts on their phone. They'd rather just be able to scroll through on their phone. There's apps like Scriptation that will let you highlight and make notes on some sort of tablet device. And then when a new version of the script or the schedule come out, it will copy the notes over. So there are tools that you can use to facilitate being more digital on set. So what we encourage people is to do more of an opt-in policy as opposed to an opt-out in terms of getting things printed. We just assume call sheets, schedules, scripts, everything is going to be delivered digitally unless you specifically request sending them. Because otherwise, I mean, I've had so many times also where there's call sheets on the street. Like